Eli Drinkwitz had Missouri on the cusp of a playoff run. Subdued by injuries and maybe a stagnant offense, what can Missouri do in the transfer portal heading into next year to make a college football playoff run?
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Crossover edition of Locked On the Portal and Locked On Mizzou. I am Brian Smith, your host of Locked On the Portal, and thank you for making Locked On the Portal and Locked On Mizzou a part of your day each and every day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We are brought to you by your friends over at FanDuel. New customers can bet $5, and if it hits, you can unlock $300 to use across the FanDuel app. If you haven't already, download it today. We're going to be talking about the opportunity for Missouri later on in the show. Everything that we talk about will lead into, can Missouri be a playoff team next year? They're on the cusp this season. What do they need to do to take that next step forward, not just from a talent perspective, but overall with coaching and everything they do as an organization? For that to happen, the 26 changes in the portal cycle. There's only one window. How will Missouri attack it? Does it really matter? They did a really good job this year, but there are some strategic things we need to discuss. And then just overall, looking at the 25 haul for Missouri, they hit big at the top. Damon Wilson, just as one example. How can they use that as a barometer for what's next? To help me figure out all of this, Mr. John Miller of Locked On Mizzou. John, how you doing, sir?
Doing fantastic, Brian. Thanks for having me as always.
Absolutely. We were talking off air. I mean, Damon Wilson's one of my favorite players in college football. I knew him when he was in high school at Venice down in Florida, transferred in from Georgia. He's been a very, very good player, and he's just a good guy, easy to root for. That is something that you really can't go wrong with, having a pass rusher that everybody likes on the team that is a team-first guy and an NFL player. They don't grow on trees. I guarantee you that Kirby Smart would like to rethink their decision-making on how they approached him last year, because their pass rush stinks at Georgia. So with that being stated, how do you look at the overall group they brought in? I know hindsight is 2020, but we're playing with house money here. What do you think Eli would have done differently, if anything, with this 25 group of portal players?
Well, gosh, I mean, the obvious, hey, what would have happened is, well, I know Missouri tried really, really hard to get Fernando Mendoza on campus. I mean, there's the obvious one. Hey, maybe throw an extra $1 million his way. That would have certainly been worth it. And that's not to really just crush Bo Pribula or anything, but I think it's fair to say that even before you mention the injuries, of course, at quarterback, which have been brutal for Missouri, they lost their first and second string guys essentially for the season. You know, I just think the offense had been trending in the wrong direction even before Pribula had gotten hurt against Vanderbilt. But to your original question just on how Missouri did in the portal in general, I think they did great. I mean, Drinkwitz said in the offseason he thinks this was his most talented roster at Missouri, and I think that really probably played out, unfortunately, just at the most important position. It wasn't quite good enough. Also, the place kicker goes down in the first game of the season, too. That was brutal luck for Missouri as well. I mean, it just some things went wrong there. And to me, like we were kind of talking about a little off air, it's possible the Missouri offense has got a little stagnant to me, too.
Agreed. I think we'll get into that momentarily. But besides, again, my guy is Damon Wilson, open-endedly biased towards him because I like the guy. Who would be your other picks as just top players? Hardy, obviously, Kevin out at wide receiver, but anybody under the radar that they brought in from the portal that probably didn't get enough credit for this year? Anybody you'd like to give a little shout out to?
Well, certainly Josiah Trotter has done one heck of a job. I mean, he's kind of an obvious name. He's been great. I mean, one of the best run defenders probably at the linebacker position in the whole country. I'd say Santana Banner is a name who's done really well. A guy who's come in from the transfer portal, kind of maybe not the most ballyhooed name in the world, but as he has gotten more snaps at the safety position, well, it seems like the communication on the back end has gotten a little better. I don't know how much of that is him specifically, but I'll say this, Missouri just brought in a lot of different names. Jalen Catalon, another one. in the secondary, and for the most part, it's worked out. You saw some early season hiccups there where Missouri gave up some big plays over the top, that kind of thing. But you saw even against Texas A&M, one of the best offenses in the entire country, really first half, I mean, that defense played as well as they possibly could have before, the dam broke a bit in the second half when it was clear that the Tigers weren't going to be able to move the football well enough.
I thought they did a nice job piecing it together in the secondary. Like Dre Norwood is a guy that's a transfer. Catalan, you mentioned. Pride is a guy that's, he's a former transfer.
Transfer the year before, yep.
Yep. So it's not just, this is something people forget. Just because you transfer doesn't mean you're a grad transfer. It doesn't mean that you only have 1 year. Some guys, when you really hit, is you find a guy that's an underclassman that could be a year start. I mean, it's still possible, technically, that Damon could return next year and be your stud edge rusher. But, I mean, we both think he'll at least test the NFL waters. Those are the things you're looking for. And Missouri's had a nice blend of those two. And to that point, Ahmad Hardy will return in 2026. So that certainly helps. With that, I have to ask the question that I'm doing this, like I told you off air, with every guy that I do a crossover with. What are the three spots going into the offseason? We're almost to the end of the season. What are the three positions that you think Mizzou has to hit to make another run at the playoff? Because they're on that cusp, or they're on that line. What do they got to hit on, John?
Sure. Well, first of all, you bring up Damon Wilson. If indeed he does go off to the NFL, I know Zion Young is going to be, his eligibility is going to be exhausted. So Missouri's going to be looking at the portal once again on the defensive line. I think offensive line, too, another position you almost have to hit each and every year, really. Offensive line for at least depth at the very least. Same with defensive line. But Missouri has some important starters, a couple at least, that they're likely going to have to replace on that defensive line. I'd also say wide receiver, too. You brought up Kevin Coleman. He's going to be done. He's going to exhaust his eligibility. So then you've got the returning Donovan Olubade, who looks like will be a true sophomore next year. I think he can be a true number one. He's that talented. The other guys, though, I think that there's definitely an opportunity to upgrade. Get a second guy there with Olubade. Not that Josh Manning isn't a good player with talent, and Marquise Johnson certainly has his talents too, a really good deep threat that Missouri just really hasn't used much in that capacity this season. Still, though, I just think a true number two receiver would be a spot I would be looking to upgrade at if I'm Missouri.
Yeah, I agree with that. And on that point, I didn't even know who he was before the year, but Norfleet, the tight end, he's a junior. Is he coming? Is he going to turn pro, you think, or is he going to stick around? That one, I don't have a feel for it like you would.
Sure. Well, you look at the skill set and it jumps off the page. He does look like he has potential NFL type skills. The problem is he's once again for the second straight year suffered a shoulder injury. He was out against Texas A&M. I just want to see him be healthy for an entire season before I start talking about NFL for Brett Norfleet. But he's got the skills. He really does.
His hands, man.
Yeah.
Like he makes catches that you go, oh, okay, that's not a normal tight end. And
yeah, his size is really athletic too, obviously.
Oh, yeah. I think he's a guy that could have played defensive end. He's a very, very special talent. We're going to talk about, on the other side, the changes in the transfer portal. For those you don't know, there's only one window. That is next here on this Locked On Crossover Edition. Your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Wayfair. The holiday season is right around the corner, and that means it's time to get your home ready. Whether you need more seating for guests, cozy new linens, or fun for serving all the different things you have at your house to your friends during the holiday hosting, Wayfair's Black Friday sale is here to help you make your place shine. And the best part, you don't even have to wait. Wayfair's Black Friday deals are happening all month long. So right now, you can get up to 70% off everything from sofas to spatulas. Literally anything that you need for your home. I recently bought a desk off Wayfair and had it delivered to my house. You could get something as simple as coasters. You could get pillows or anything else that you need for your home. Don't miss out on Black Friday deals going on right now. You don't have to wait for Black Friday. Head to wayfair.com. Shop Wayfair's Black Friday sale for up to 70% off. That's wayfair.com. The sale will be ending on December the 7th. Thank you once again for making Locked On the Portal and Locked On Mizzou a part of your day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 network in the land. John, we have one portal window this year. I'm sure most people probably know that, but just for full transparency, it is January 2nd through the 16th that players officially get in. They'll announce Hayes Fawcett and everything else, all those edits and stuff. But this changes the dynamic. And Missouri's got money and all that. But the biggest thing is you do not have the objective point of view of going through spring and fine-tuning afterwards.
Right.
That is huge. I trust Eli a heck of a lot more, no offense to a lot of coaches, with his evaluations. And I think it'll be an advantage to Missouri in an awkward way. I just think other teams will fail more. It's not that they're necessarily going to be worse, but Eli just doesn't really miss on the evals very much. They really don't. What are your thoughts?
I actually totally agree with that, and that's an angle I had not yet thought of, so thanks for bringing it to my attention. I'm with you on that. I think that, yes, Missouri and Eli Drinkwitz, his staff, have done – I think the proof's in the pudding. You look at how their transfer portal classes have gone. They've been really successful. They've been highly ranked, and then you look at the results, and I think it speaks for itself. So, and like you alluded to, the good news is for Missouri, yeah, they've had those, obviously everybody's had those two portal windows, if you will, Missouri's done 95% of its damage in the early portal. So they really haven't need to supplement it all that much.
Right.
I can't really think of somebody they've gotten in the late portal window that's been a massive person.
Right.
I'm sure there's an exception to that rule that I'm not thinking of right off the top of my head, but for the most part, again, Damon Wilson, Zion Young, these guys that they've gotten in the last couple cycles, it's all pretty early. They identify them early and they get them. And really, and as I brought up Fernando Mendoza, the current Indiana quarterback, well, a few cycles ago that Missouri was about this close to getting Jaden Daniels too. So even the quarterback position, which they haven't completely gotten right, boy, they've been awfully, awfully close. So yeah, to me, if you're a Missouri fan, while obviously it's been frustrating the last couple seasons to be right on the cusp of maybe a playoff run and have it knocked off this year by injuries in some ways, and obviously some of our own self-inflicted wounds too, but I think you just got to stay the course and realize that we've got a pretty good thing going here.
Yeah, as the saying goes, be careful for what you ask for anybody who's complaining.
Yep.
Like, give me 10 coaches better at putting his staff together and evaluating talent to put the roster together. I don't think you could do that in college football. I don't think they're 10 or better. So again, they've already, ironically, essentially practiced what they're going to have to do now because they hit so well in the winter window. And this is why I said, hey, they've already figured this out. There are other teams, and I'm not picking on them. If you have an injury in spring or something, you used to be able to go get a guy. Fair enough. But now, if you have an injury or something, everybody's in the same boat in spring. You're hosed because there will be very slim pickings of players that are remaining. You just enter the portal in January. You can sign whenever, but they're really good players aren't going to be available after spring practice. They're just not. So I think Missouri is going to gain an edge there. Secondarily, everybody knows that they need linemen. Mizzou's going to be in the same boat. Missouri's willing to spend on it.
Yep.
Your point about the quarterback situation, I don't know Bo's injury, but you've got multiple guys now that have got experience. I don't think they're going to spend a lot at quarterback. Correct me if I'm wrong there, John. Maybe you take a veteran backup guy or something.
That would be my assumption, is that Missouri there's a decent chance they'll end up taking a veteran backup type maybe.
Sure.
But yeah, it really it's all so much in flux the next few weeks here for Missouri in a couple different ways. First of all, the sort of pink elephant in the room we haven't discussed yet is, well, Eli Drinkwitz's name keeps getting brought up a lot at these open coaching positions. I don't really think he's going to leave personally. We'll see what happens. I would certainly bet on him staying at Missouri, but hey, there's a factor there. But to me, what's more interesting is right now, at least in the immediate sense, the quarterback position for Missouri. yeah, Missouri may not have a lot to play for on paper these next couple weeks, these next 3 ball games. But boy, this Mississippi State game at OU, at Arkansas, it's going to give you a really good look at Matt Zollers here over the last few weeks. And if he can play well enough that it looks like he's your presumptive starter next season, well, then what does Bo Prabula do? Does he stick around at Missouri next season? And then the other stretch, the other direction, maybe Zollers isn't impressive enough that he's solidified that job. Well, now you're looking at maybe a quarterback competition. Does Sam Horn go off to Major League Baseball with the Dodgers next season? I mean, there's just so many different revolving doors and variables here for Missouri right now. You got to really be watching my podcast, quite honestly. That's all I can tell you. There's a lot happening behind the scenes.
Missouri's quarterback situation will be as interesting as any there is in the offseason. Unless Horn just immediately announces he's going to the Dodgers, which
very well could happen. Which well could happen. I'm not sure. I think if he wants to play college football again, maybe he sticks around at Missouri for another year, or maybe he goes somewhere else. It just, as I say this out loud, it just seems like it would make a lot more sense for him to make his move to Major League Baseball at this point. But I think Sam's kind of a little bit of an unusual guy, it would seem, because I think most guys, or just at least his circumstances are unusual, because I think most guys would have probably left Missouri way before now. So I'm not willing to make any huge assumptions there. I just think it's another kind of fascinating factor, a very unique situation that Missouri has on its hands right now.
If they are able, hypothetically, to save some cash on quarterback, whether Sam comes or goes, I think it'll be less money they're dumping into quarterback in addition to what they already have. They're going to be able to go after a top-notch receiver, a defensive end that maybe they don't get Damon Wilson again. Like, I don't know if you can hit better than that. That's about as A+ as it's going to get from all around. Where else do you think a school is just like 1 or 2 players away? Like in the SEC, like Missouri, I started this on purpose with you, because they're the one team, like there's obvious names, Texas A&M, Georgia, that are just kind of there because they recruit high school so well.
Sure.
I think Missouri is the next team, if there's going to be somebody break through, that is there. Auburn, you could argue, but everybody says that every year. I've given up on Auburn until they prove it.
Right.
So that program, I can't figure out Auburn.
Sure.
But is there any way that you could see them? I know they've got a lot of juniors and seniors. Wilson could turn pro. If they get that one guy at whatever spot, maybe it is a dude at receiver. Maybe it is another Damon Wilson. Do you think they can be a playoff team in 2026?
Sure, I think all of those positions are incredibly important, but I don't want to be too reductive, but gosh, a lot of it does just come back to that quarterback spot, doesn't it? I think Missouri's been so close the last couple of years. You get a little bit better at that spot. And the other thing is, we mentioned this a little bit, I'm wondering if maybe the Kirby Moore, Eli Drinkwitz offense has gotten a little stagnant here the last few years, simply because it just seems like no matter who's at quarterback, the offense looks the same. And I can't say that Brady Cook, Bo Prabula, and Matt Zollers have the same skill set. So I'm just getting a little bit worried that if Missouri is just trying to run its system instead of trying to run an offense that works around the players that they have. So if indeed that's the situation, Missouri's got to get better up front on the offensive line. Yeah, getting another receiver would be great. I think offensive line is even more important, because the most important play of that entire offense is the outside zone. When that outside zone run works, suddenly everything else in the offense works too.
Couldn't agree more. I've always said this. The most stubborn human beings on planet Earth are college football coaches.
100%.
And we're going to talk about that next, because I think the other piece, John just gave me the great segue. I was going to talk about this anyway. Is Missouri going to adapt just a little bit? They're going to have a more experienced quarterback next year, regardless who ends up being behind center. And I'm pretty sure that we've seen enough from their portal additions recently. They're going to be very good at the wide receiver position. And that Hardy guy, he's solid too. Let's talk about that next right here on this crossover, Locked on the Portal and Locked on Mizzou. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to be riding that hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, You can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's talk about adjusting. Coaches, and that word, adjusting is a long word, John, but it's like a 4-letter word to a lot of coaches. I have stories for days, like facial expressions that I can explain, like face-to-face conversation. They hate it. They want their system to work their way, come hell, come high water. That's the majority of coaches.
Yep.
But the ones that win tend to adjust. You ever heard of a guy by the name of Nick Saban?
I was just going to bring up Saban. I was going to say in 2009, Alabama was 3 yards in a cloud of dust in the I formation, and then suddenly I got a little stale, and, well, who comes in? Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian. Suddenly Alabama's running a lot of the jet sweep, spread offense stuff that you see everywhere. So, yeah, great point.
He didn't want to do it. Remember when he was fighting the no huddle offense stuff?
Yes, he hated all the hurry up offense stuff
because he knew his defensive talent couldn't be rotated in for him to have an advantage. That's why he hated it.
Exactly, of course.
And he was lying about it on TV. We all knew what it was, but as soon as he had the talent on offense, he didn't care anymore.
Yep. Suddenly that topic wasn't brought up so much.
Yeah, it's amazing. But at the same time, if you add one or two pieces, I'm telling, for those who don't know and haven't watched Missouri a ton, if you're watching on my channel, Olubade is a kid I knew at high school at IMG. He's a dude. Kid out of Chicago, went to IMG, was recruited by everybody, ended up in Mizzou. That kid's going to be really, really good the next year. If they can get one piece on the outside to complement him, in addition to the two guys they got coming back, they could have one of the better wide receiver groups in the conference. And again, John and I don't know which quarterback or quarterbacks it will be. That's got to play itself out over the next few games, Mississippi State, etc. But they should be pretty good at quarterback next year. We know they can coach O-line because of what they've done up to this point. I would assume, John, at least one dude in the portal will come. It's got to be easier to sell it when you're a running football team because the linemen that I know, they like playing in that kind of offense. They should be explosive. Do you think that the stubbornness will set in to where they won't throw it around a little more? Like in spring ball, if it clicks for, again, I don't know which quarterback it's going to be. It's going to be Purbulla, if it's going to be Matt Zoller, whatever. Do you think they would allow it to continue and throw it around? I'm not saying full-blown LSU or Alabama 2019. Let's be realistic. But especially if Norfleet's back at tight end, that's a lot of NFL talent at the skill spots.
Sure. Why
couldn't Missouri be a 35-point per game team that can strike you down the field instead of just running over you and grinding you into the ground?
Well, I think that potentially, again, they can have the weapons to do that. Of course, not to be repetitive, a lot of it's going to come back to quarterback. But like you say, you hit somebody maybe in the wide receiver portal. Look at what Texas A&M is doing this season and how much different their offense looks with a couple of portal receivers. And, of course, another thing we haven't talked about, of course, retention is going to be incredibly important, too. The good news is Missouri's been really good with retaining all of the players that it wants over the last few seasons. I can't think of a guy that Missouri really, really desperately wanted to keep who was going to be a first-string type of player that Missouri then lost for that upcoming season. Other than, I guess I could say Kejuan Lacey, who's been excellent for Ole Miss. I guess I forgot because Ahmad Hardy's been really good too. So there's an exception there. But for the most part, Missouri's been really good at retaining players like a Donovan Olubade. Obviously, you're going to want to retain him. But, I think as long as Eli Drinkwitz comes back, I expect Missouri to do that again.
What about the defensive side of the ball? We both think offense. Again, Hardy will be a second year in the system, Olubade, et cetera. They're going to score some points next year. Defensively, if we are right and Damon leaves, Zion's gone, they're going to lose a couple guys at every level. Where is the position that a younger player or a transfer portal, maybe both, have to hit or they're going to take a step back? Is there any concern at any of the three levels of the defense?
Yeah, mostly up front, I would say, and then number two would be the secondary. I think Missouri's got some pretty good options. I think at linebacker right now, I feel pretty good there. And I will say, just in the portal in general, Missouri has done really, really well in the defensive line in particular. So while we'll have some spots to fill there, it just seems like not only is Missouri good at identifying players at that spot, but if you're a player, Missouri should be an attractive place to play as a defensive lineman, portal guy as well. And for all the people who are just sort of like, hey, well, Missouri's paying money for people, and that's all that really matters. That, just in the portal era, some people think that money is all that matters. And certainly that is an enormous, enormous factor. But my point here is that Missouri, you can't be dismissive of their ability to find guys that fit their system and turn them into good, productive players. Because for the most part, I can't think of a lot of guys, especially, again, a defensive line that they've brought in that they thought were going to be ballers. Guess what? They all turn out to be ballers.
Their evaluations have been tremendous. Not just what John mentioned there with fit, which he's aptly right to do so, but they took some guys that other teams were like, maybe. And even Kirby, they let Damon walk. They didn't match the offer or whatever. I assume he would have stayed.
Right. You'd think so.
I mean, look, Kirby doesn't miss often.
Right.
If you're beating him on evaluation in any way, shape, or form, that's thumbs up. So I have faith that they will. And Missouri is my lookout for them in 2016. And I know we're way, way down the.
Sure.
I'm curious to see them in spring. Because if the defense is anywhere near as good as it is this year, again, replacing Zion and Damon, that would be rough. But if it's anywhere near as good, the offense, I think, is going to take a step forward just because of Olubide and Hardy's. I mean, that's an NFL running back. The only reason he's going to be back next year is he's not eligible to turn pro.
Right.
That's it.
Yep.
He's only 2 years removed from high school. You got to be 3 to make it to the NFL. So I think this is a team that can make the playoff next year. And I'm really curious to see who they go after because I trust their staff. They've earned it. The last 2 years have proven it. They're on that cusp because for as long as you and I have followed Missouri, they have not had teams like this that could be this good defense. Like they've had offenses and stuff that's 10, 15 years ago, whatever. But the defense is the standard that doesn't get talked about enough because it's not as exciting.
Sure.
They're a pain to deal with because they're physical. They're consistent. They don't give you easy stuff. If they can just hit on a couple guys, and that's a big question, but if they do, John, why couldn't Missouri be a top 10 team? That's my early estimation.
Sure. I think the case for Missouri in 26 is going to be similar to what the bull case for Missouri was in 2025. And I really do. I think by 2026, I do think, though, that if Missouri doesn't at least tweak the offense a little bit to the point where, Missouri has just been totally seemingly afraid of throwing the ball in the intermediate middle part of the football field, even deep down the middle of the field too. It just seems like there's a real strategic choice to not throw that ball in that part of the field. And it just seems like, well, the defensive coordinators have figured that out now too, and they're adjusting their defenses accordingly. I just think that. And also, it just seems like Missouri this season is really pared down as the season has gone along here. Maybe this is by necessity, but some of that pre-snap motion and shifting and all that kind of stuff, maybe they just didn't feel like they had the experience at quarterback or the right quarterback or the offensive line, whatever it is, to be able to do all of that. It just seems like, if anything, the Missouri offense has gotten a little bit more simple this season while still just kind of leaning on the same core concepts that we've done since 23 at least, and probably even before that.
I agree. And that's something that we'll get into in spring ball when I have to crossover with you. Shifts and motions, they're not fun for the offense to learn, but boy, they're really not friendly for a defense in 1 week to prepare for. If your quarterback, if you feel comfy with him, and you practice that all spring, that changes things. So that's why the next few games with Matt behind center is so important, because you need not only a starting quarterback, somebody needs to be the backup, et cetera. The ideal scenario is still for Purbuella to be the quarterback, and then Matt continues to learn. But again, like you said earlier, maybe Matt kills it. I have no idea. And if he does, that's your guy. And then we have a whole nother discussion, because then maybe Purbuella wants to move on. There's all kinds of stuff that's going to happen. But appreciate you coming on with me today, John. Can you tell everybody where they can find your work?
Of course, Locked On Mizzou on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts, and social media at Locked On Mizzou everywhere.
Absolutely, my friend. You can find the Portal Podcast, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and you can find me on social media at FB Scout _Florida. This has been a crossover Locked on Mizzou and Locked on the Portal.